And today I'm going to be doing some second fix work, which involves putting the door lining in, the architrave around that lining, and also some skirting boards. So this is something that I've been doing for years and years and years. As a carpenter, as an apprentice carpenter, you're taught special ways of doing skirtings and architraves, and there is a little bit to it, so I'm going to take you through that process. So gone are the days where we used to make our linings up. So years ago we'd make our linings up, we'd buy the material and we'd put a tongue and a groove into the head and on the jambs. So nowadays you just go out and buy a whitewood door lining like this from builders merchants. They're mass produced, that's why the cost is quite reasonable. They're not always the most brilliant quality timber, they're quite knotty. But what they are is really dry. The moisture content of these is suitable for new work, okay? So, first of all, if this was going in before the plaster, I'd always prime it and seal it because they take on the moisture, they expand, you put your architrave on, it shrinks back, and in a year's time, you've got a crack all the way there between the architrave and the door lining. So that's the first thing. But in our situation today, all the plastering's done, all the wet work's done, and we're going to put the casing into a finished opening. So the first thing I do when I get these out is just check that the door width, in this case we're using a 6'6" by 2'6" door. The reason I speak in imperial is because that's how we still talk about doors. So I'm using a 6'6" by 2'6", so I'm just getting the right groove, making sure I've got the right one. The next thing I always do is mark my face, side and edges. Right, so this is my face, side and edge, and I'm going to look down the jambs. Now they're never that straight, these, but the skill of a carpenter is to get them straight in the aperture. They're fine if they're bowing this way, but it's when they're twisting that way then I think you'd reject it and you'd go and get another one. So what I'm going to do when I make my lining up, I'm making the bow outwards. So when I fix the top and the bottom, pack the middle, it's easy to push it out. If I do it this way around, I've got to try and pull it in. So I'm using that to my advantage. So I'm going to mark my face, side and edge on that. That's a nicer inside edge. So we'll use this one as the inside. Face, side and edge. Same on the other one. Face, side and edge. No, okay. So the next step is to put the legs against the wall, measure them apart roughly 30 inches. Just another quick tip, these have really sharp machined edges, and just to save the painter a little job is we're going to take those arrowses off. That's all we're doing. A couple of hits. And it really makes a nice job. Same on the jambs. Get your tape tracked. Face, side and edge, all facing in and up the right way. And dry fix first, just try it dry first. Sometimes you find you get a bit of a cut in these, and so trying to get them together can be a bit difficult. But as long as you've got a little plane, you can literally just take the top off just so it eases in, because what you don't want to do is smash it together and split that. So I always like to glue these joints. I just think that for the sake of 2 seconds to squirt a bit of glue in just makes all the difference. But then I'm a joiner, so everything is glued together. Okay, so I can use my hammer to tap it up because this isn't the face side, you're never going to see it. So there's 2 ways of doing this now. Quite often when we're making lots of linings up, we'll use the stops to do bracing. So what we do first, we set a brace up on the bottom face. I'll measure down 1.6 metres, same on the other side, exactly 1.6 metres. Doesn't have to be 1.6, but that's where I That's where I like it.
Just a little bit the same, yeah?
Yeah, exactly the same. So you're just making a parallel box. You're just going to temporarily pin it. And obviously you're going to set that the same distance as that, which is 764. Now we're going to square it up using another one of the stops, and this is our squaring device. We're just going to butt one end into there, and you're going to pencil mark that on the corner, and you're going to check that one there. And you're going to pull your frame until, in fact what you do is you mark that one as well, and then you split the difference exactly in the middle of that square, okay? Simple, you haven't got to try and using a tape measure. You're just using the materials you have. And so in my case, I want to tweak the frame in this direction. Easy, easy peasy. Check it again, and we will be square. We're working with plastered walls. So therefore we want to make sure that the face of our lining is with those plastered walls and not set back, because when you put your architrave on, it's going to do this. So what you need to do is just check the aperture again with your stick and just see if there's any high or crowd points. So there's nothing on that side, and it's pretty nice here. I've got one little lump here. Just set a little block on the door casing, roughly in that position, 660mm down. I'm just going to set myself a little block here. My wife said to me once, why do I have so many drills? Time is money. So I've got one set up with a screw and countersink, one screw. So that's what we're up against. So I'm just going to make myself a little toggle block here. And basically that's going to enable me to set the frame when we're in situ. So if you're wondering why we're putting the frame in after the plastering, well, traditionally door linings, door frames are first fix items before plastering. But nowadays, for lots of reasons, for example, some people use hardwood. A lot of the time the plastering is done before, and it's basically to avoid the moisture going into the woodwork and also to protect them as well. So there's nothing wrong with doing it afterwards, but if you're doing a lot and it's a new build, chances are you'll be putting them in before the plastering.
Yeah, but if the carpenter doesn't turn up when you want to get the plastering done, and the plasterer suddenly phones you up and says, I've got a spare day, can I come and do that room? And you go, well, the door linings aren't done. Yeah, go on, do it.
Well, quite a lot of sites as well, they put a stop bead round as well, because the stop bead sets your, that's fine if all of your board work and your stud work's working, so it works really well with metal partitioning, because that's a lot more regular than the stud work. What I'd like to do is write HS where the hinges are, and that just means hinge side. Top of the top hinge, and I don't care what anyone says, challenge me on this, but this is the way we do it, this is where we were taught. From the lining to the top of the top hinge, whether it's a 4-inch butt or a 3-inch butt or a 100mm butt, 75mm butt, is 6 inches. Always 6 inches. So that just gives me an idea there. The bottom, from the bottom of the door up to the bottom of the butt, is 9 inches. I know this is 1/2 inch long, so I'm going 9.5. This is where you get your other bit of stop. So these stops that they send are handy, because what we're going to do with this is set my screws out. So I like to have my screws, this is timber work I'm screwing into, so it's a luxury. If it was masonry, I'd be checking I wasn't going over into the joint, I was going into the block, so I'd set it out with that. So what I like to do is come down about 125, up about 125, I'm adding on my 1/2 inch, so 140 say. Then we go in the middle of that. Little arrow, I know where I'm going now. So this is a bit, you might think it's a bit over the top, but if I'm doing hundreds of linings over a period of a week or two, I just keep this one rod. It's done. So I'm, you know, it's done and dusted. And then I'm just basically doing that, both sides. Boom. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy with my fixing point. Now, we just square them in. Faint pencil lines, you don't want to, especially if you're working with hardwood. In fact, another rule applies there. When I'm working with hardwood, I take my rod to the next level. I have basically a strip of ply, which is hot lining grip with the pilots in it already. I just put it up, pilot it. There's no marker to do at all. You don't want to have the French polishing come along and say, I've got to sand all those pencil marks out. My square's a little bit oversized, but perfect for the job. With one of my trusty offcuts of door lining materials, I'm going to set my fixing points. Okay, so they're only 38mm pins, they're only going in there 5 or 6mm thereabouts. It's just literally now I can go off and have a cup of tea.
Why not?
Why not? Nice and true. I'll grain the right way. Leave them to go off until a bit later on. Grain. Perfect.
So when you cut those plugs,
Yeah.
you cut them at the side.
I just took them out of the horn that I cut off of the lining.
Yeah.
I took them out of, so the bit that I cut off from here, I just used that. So you do that, especially if you was doing a hardwood one, that's the ideal material because it's what you're actually working with. That screw's got to go in a bit more. That one there is just my final one there. So the last job is just clean these little plugs back. The glue's gone off, it's really simple. You just take the chisel and knock them back, leaving them slightly proud. That's it, and that's simple stuff. Again, just nice and gently and flatten them off. And the idea is, like this one's a classic, but that's just a fluke, but the grain looks like it runs through. So if this was a hardwood job, by the time you sand that in, providing the glue's dry and you don't get a black ring, you'd never even know that there was a screw behind there. So you might be thinking that's a bit overkill because you're going to put a stop down here, but it's just the way we roll. Again, that's another classic there because the grain is really nice with the actual wood. So that's that door lining fitted. My last job to do is I just temporarily pin the stops to one side so they don't get lost basically. And I can pin through them because I can just easily pull the pin out again afterwards. So pin them in there. Put that next to it, the head, and they won't get lost for later on. Thanks very much for watching this video on how to fit a door lining. Please check back soon because we'll be doing some second fix work, architraves, skirtings, and we'll also be doing our own interpretation of how to hang a door. So keep checking back. Thanks for subscribing to Skill Builder. We'll see you soon.